Hello, and welcome to Dark Academia Queen. Today we are going to be talking about a haunted history again of another famous city here in the US. Can you guess which one I talked about? Well, it's not New Orleans, as we already talked about that one. This is a city that has been on my travel bucket list for a long time, and I am going to make my way there eventually. I would like to go towards Gad while I'm there. I was like, just go to the beaches and everything. Like, only beaches I know is on the Gulf Coast. That's the only beaches I know. But hit that like button, ring that bell, for notifications. Also, joining me today as we talk about the history of Savannah, Georgia. So, you're probably wondering, why am I talking about haunted histories? Well, I love ghosts. I love all of that. I love haunted stuff. I would buy a house that someone died in, for crying out loud. That's real estate gold right there. Because nobody's going to want to buy a house that someone died in. If you buy an old house, there's a chance that someone's died there. Or if you buy a house that there was like a burial land built land around it, you're still going to get haunted either way. So I'll just make my arrangements with the ghost saying, we make our arrangements. You stay on your end, I stay on my end, yada yada yada. But anyway, let's talk about the history of Savannah, shall we? Its recorded history will begin in 1733, and that was the same year General James Auguthorpe and around 120 passengers of the good ship Anne landed in the Bluff High along the Savannah River in February. Um, Auguthorpe named the 13th and final American colony, Georgia, after English King George II, and Savannah became its first city. So you might say it's the oldest city in Georgia. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, um, yeah, anyway, I lost my train of thought. Okay, but let's talk about the colonial period in Savannah. And this plan was offered to start for England, working poor and strengthen the colonies for an increasing. And it was originally meant to be a utopia. And the colony of Georgia was chartered as a buffer zone for South Carolina, protecting it from advance of the Spanish in Florida. And under the original charter, individuals were free to worship as they and rum and rum, lawyers, and slavery were forbidden for a long time. Upon setting there, he became friends with a local Yamacraw Indian chief, Tamachichi, and he and Tamachichi pledged mutual goodwill as the Yamacraw chief granted new arrivals permission to settle Savannah on the bluff. And as a result, the town flourished with warfare, and the accompanying hardships that burdened many of the early colonies. Savannah is known as America's first planned city, and Ankador laid the city out in series of grids and allowed for the wide open streets to be intertwined with shady public squares and parks that served as the town's meeting place and centers of business. Savannah had 24 original squares, 22 squares still in existence. Now, what was it like with the Revolutionary War and the antebellum period? Well, I love a good antebellum home. I'm not gonna lie on that one. But during the American Revolution, the British took Savannah in 1778 and held it until 1782, and the land sea force of the French in Americas tried to retake the city in 1779, first by siege and then by direct assault, but failed. And after the independence was secured, Savannah flourished, and farmers discovered that the soil was rich and the climate favorable for cultivation of cotton and rice. Plantations of um, slavery became highly profitable systems for whites in the neighboring low country of South Carolina. So Georgia, the free colony, legalized slavery, and the transatlantic slave brought many African Americans through the port of Savannah. Many who stayed in the area formed a unique culture in their coastal communities in Georgia and South Carolina. What about the Savannah Cotton Exchange? Well, when the wealth bought cotton, residents built lavish homes and churches throughout the city, at the intention of the cotton in the plantation outside Savannah. The city rivaled Charleston in commercial port, but many of the world's cotton price were set aside in Savannah's cotton exchange, and the exchange is still in existence. And the building is still in existence. But Savannah was not spared the misfortune. Two devastating fires in 1796 and 1820 each left half of Savannah's ashes in, but residents to rebuild in the year 1820 saw an outbreak of the yellow fever that killed a tenth of the population, and Savannah also survived fires, epidemics, hurricanes, and but almost bounced back. Now, following the Civil War, pre-Civil War, Savannah was praised as the most picturesque and serene city in America. It was known for its grand oaks, fasting, and the Spanish moss of the Gentile city. See, it's making me really want to make that go follow through with that trip I had originally planned to go on a couple of years ago. Savannah. Anyway, um, during the Civil War, the city suffered through a blockade so strict that the economy crumbled. Impassable Fort Pulaski at the mouth of the Savannah River was captured by Union soldiers in 1862, and the city itself did not fall until Union General William Tecumseh um, Sherman entered in mid-December. And after burning the city of Atlanta and everything else with it. Now, Sherman was said to have been so impressed by its beauty that he could not destroy it, and on December 22nd, 1864, he sent a famous telegram to President Lincoln offering the city as a Christmas present. So, now that we know the brief history, let's talk about the haunted history and one of the reasons I would love to go visit. Believe it or not, aside from its beauty, I totally would come visit this town in a heartbeat. Ah, so, but yes, and now that I live in Nashville, I wonder if I can bypass Atlanta. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, nobody wants to travel through Atlanta. Sorry. That is just traffic like Birmingham, Alabama, nobody wants to deal with. But for but for some, a visit to Savannah is all about learning the storied history of those charming southern cities. But for others, there's a deep, dark past that is just so intriguing. Me, that is considered to be one of the most haunted cities in America, and it beckons paranormal enthusiasts and everyone who's the least bit curious about ghosts. So, we had to go back to the 1700s to talk about this first, okay? A visit today to this was the era of pirates. And this is naturally picturesque city that may hinder your ability to imagine the shady and dangerous pirates that were often in Savannah, coming to the harbor and causing more than their share of trouble and terror. But if you happen to step onto the pirate's house built in 1754, you'll discover why so many consider this to be a well-known restaurant as a significant port spot in Savannah's haunted history. Think about the places going on my travel bucket list. So, despite its heyday, it was a huge place of refuge among things to many sailors and locals. But it was during this time of the pirates that pirates would kidnap suspecting patrons using underground tunnels beneath the restaurant, which led to the Savannah River. And the local forced men into tunnels and onto their ships, where the poor souls were left to live a life of servitude, never to be seen again by their families and friends. These events were undiscovered for years, and but the ghosts that linger inside these tunnels within the Pirate's House restaurants have long been haunted visitors. Now, one of the places I wanted to originally go to when I planned this trip was the Pink House, and it's gonna say pretty and pink. But for those of you who don't know, I am like a Barbenheimer type person, so I love the color pink. I love the color black. So, But anyway, that's not important. But it was in 1771 when James Habersham Jr. began the construction of what is now the Old Pink House and one of Savannah's most well-known, well-loved restaurants. Took more than 18 years to complete his family home because of its numerous construction delays, including the British occupying his home during the war. One of the most disheartening problems began to arise was that no matter how much he would paint the Hersham applied to the house, the bricks would bleed in the plaster and continually turn the house from its desired red brick to a dainty pink color. Now, the issue was whether the bricks or the plaster was one Hersham couldn't eliminate, or for many years he and his descendants suffered ridicule from what should have been a trivial problem. Now, the house, though, was not as much as a problem as the heartbreak Haversham suffered in the hands of the children. His sons, whom he adored, also had a different point in view, and went all against the Herbstrom and believed that the siding was for the Patriots' cause. And they would work underground with the Sons of Liberty and fought against England in the Revolutionary War, surviving the Great Fire of 1820, the War of 1812, and the Civil War. The mansion was occupied by many different people after Harbersham passed away and the family sold it. But because of the many unpleasant events that occurred um, within the house and the rift between Harbersham and his sons, there were many certain sadness that weighed heavy in the old pink house. And it was these events that had caused fears to continually hunt the mansion. It is not unusual for spirits to linger in their home and amend somehow change what happened in the past. Now, it's no surprise that most of the popular ghosts spotted at the old pink house is James Habersham Jr. himself, and guests and staff have reported seeing the apparitions of children and young female slaves in various spots within the restaurant. Now let's jump to the 1800s now. What do we know that's going on in the 1800s? Well, yellow fever was one thing, and it was in full swing in 1820, and it was uncommon for massive amounts of people, sometimes the entire family, to die at once. There and wasn't uncommon at all. And one can only imagine the 1800s, the citizens of Savannah continue to suffer and others' deaths either from accident, fire, or tragedy. So when the designer of the 1790 inn died in a riding accident before the construction of the masterpiece could be completed, it was written off as another sad tragedy. But to one person, death meant so much more, and that was a young bride whose name was Anne Powell. It is said to believe that she never loved her older husband and was actually in love with a sailor who legend tells us visited the inn after its completion. Now, there are many different versions of Anne's story, and there's one common thread, um, is that she was so heartbroken that she got pregnant with the sailor and took her own life by jumping the balcony at room 204. And since then, visitors of the hotel, especially those who stay in room 204, um, will tell accounts of seeing her ghost. I think that would be pretty cool, honestly. Not gonna lie. Like, I'm that weird person. We can all say it. I know I'm that weird person. But there are many different stories of her presence. Something that she messes the sheets up on the bed after it's been made, and others have heard her sobbing, and others report to walking up to the sight of Anne standing there over them crying and turning to jump out the window. And because of the event, the hotel used to require the guests staying in room 204 to sign a waiver that they couldn't ask for their money back. But because of its popularity among ghost hunters, the fee waiver is no longer required. Good to know. Wait, y'all think so? What do y'all think? I'm curious on this one. But there were many battles, bloodshed, and betrayal. For example, the Sorrel Reed House was deemed to be one of Savannah's many haunted houses, and has a brief history that's riddled with tragedy and death. For many, but the house was a historic event that paranormal experts believe may have caused it to not be, to become a hotbed for ghostly activity. Now, you may have heard of the stories of two brutal suicides that occurred in the Sorrel Reed house. One was Matilda Sorrel, the wife of the homeowner, Francis, and the other one was a young slave named Molly, who was supposedly involved with a torrid love affair with Francis, and accounts of the suicides vary, but many historians believe that these deaths actually took place at another location just down the block. While these events surely have been an impact on family who have lived there and perhaps even contributed to the eerie ambience of the home, there were single events that believed that this was caused by the sorority house becoming a hotbed for ghostly activities. And the house was built not long after the American Revolutionary War. But any site of the sorority house happened to be the same place where the siege of Savannah occurred. And many soldiers were massacred during the battle, and it became known as the bloodiest hour of the entire Revolution. And it is for that reason the battle is believed to be one of the true cause of spirits lingering in the Sorrel Reed house. Now, I might say this is an insult to the dead, but many people would agree that it's most likely that the ghost anywhere in the world would be a cemetery, and Savannah's Cornwall Park Cemetery is no exception. So here's the thing, I would literally go visit the cemetery. I'm one of those that yes, you could say it, like, if a town's historically known for it, like, the cemetery is the best place to go because you find a lot out about things, and it usually tells a history. But anyway, it's considered to be one of Savannah's most haunted places, and the burial was open in the 1750s and his final resting place of more than 10,000 people, and many of whom were buried in mass graves. And although the fact alone is the reason, though, that there was caused spirits to be relentless, and there's another event in the city's history that could be the cause of so much haunted activity. During the Civil War, federal troops took occupation in the cemetery, and its headquarters for the soldiers during the take of Savannah. And the soldiers were less than respectful to the hollow grounds. And in fact, they were downright malicious and proceeded to desecrate graves, damage headstones, and even shot up even many more of them. Okay, that's just sad. Like when I was a kid, my grandparents always told me and my sister that if we stepped on the graves, they were going to come up and grab us. Call it mean, but it worked. But anyway, the spirits of the dead were not angry, just angry, but they were set on revenge, and it took a reason that many visitors of the cemetery experienced eerie sensations, cold spots, witness glowing orbs, and floating about. Now there is a memorial archway with the IVS imprinted on it at Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia. Now let's talk about the Tears of an Angel. This was established in 1846, and it was Bonaventure Angel that is known for a magnificent beauty, but many visitors flock to the historic cemetery and discover that the stories of the hauntings are real. As you walk, as you walk beneath a canopy of towering oaks dripping with Spanish moss among the tombstones in the mausoleums, you wonder how something so beautiful can have such a dark past. And while there have been numerous accounts of the ghost sightings, even the dismembered sounds of vicious dogs snarling and barking and tragic death of young Savannah girls is perhaps the event that causes the continued hauntings. Gracie Watson was a 6-year-old when she died, and when she was laid to rest at Bonaventure. Here, an angel statue is marked at her grave of a beautiful little girl who was taken all too soon. And if that isn't sad enough, those who visit the cemetery have reported seeing a statue crying in real tears and hearing a voice of a child sobbing. So, why is Savannah one of the most haunted cities? Well, that that can be answered in many various forms. The first is the bloody battles. We know Savannah is a port town, and it was easy access, especially, but to walk the bloody fields of the post wars is often unsettling. But many say it is just a feeling. But in reality, in Savannah, catastrophic conflicts abound the city for centuries. Fatal crashes have left their mark on America's most haunted city. From the siege of Savannah in 1779 to the American Civil War, spectators have also said that these battles left a spiritual residue and souls were unsettled. Next was deadly diseases. Soldiers aren't the only relentless spirits in Savannah. Many believe that there are in that the, many believe victims of the 1820 yellow fever are bound to this earthly realm, and that the 1820 the disease disseminated a tenth of Savannah's population, and nine more epidemics followed. One in 1876 killed 1,066 Savannahans. Next was the fearsome fires. The outbreak of disease in 1820 was accompanied by additional devastation in the morning of January 11th when a rapidly spreading fire broke out in a stable and it blazed 500 buildings. Next were mysterious murders, such as the Mercer Williams house. Um, and while every city does have its crime, everything was a little bit more dramatic in Savannah, even in its murders. And if you participate in one of the 40 plus ghost tours in the historic district, there is no doubt there is more than murderous tales will be told. For instance, the crime made popular by Midnight in the Garden of the Good and Evil was one of them. Next is the savage slavery. Slavery. But those are five reasons like why it's one of the most haunted season. But I also want to talk about briefly like some of the best places to eat and drink as well. But it's known as the hostess city, but it has a dark secrets. You can go to Bonaventure Cemetery. You can go to the Old Pink House Restaurant and Tavern. So want to go there. You can go to 1790 and you can go to River Street as well. You can go to the Hampton Lillibridge House. You can go to the River Brewing Company as well. But that is Savannah, like the haunting history of it. What are some of the tales that you think of Savannah that you find interesting? Let me know. I will see y'all next time. Y'all have a fabulous day. And my skeletons say hello, by the way.